And the Democrats, meanwhile, twiddling their thumbs, saying, maybe this FBI investigation may work, maybe not, who knows? Like, that's pretty much what the entire strategy from the Democrats was. Ridiculous. All right, so, yeah, we all know what happened with Susan Collins, but we're going to get more into it now. And this is Susan Collins talking about here the Senate nomination in really what is a single horrific speech in front of the Senate. Susan Collins fashioned herself as the moderate and one of the few pro-choice Republicans left in the Senate, showed us what she's always been. And she announced she will vote for Brett Kavanaugh to be the next associate justice on the Supreme Court, thus ensuring his confirmation of the bench. So it was interrupted by protesters imploring her to vote no. This speech was, which is pretty incredible. Then she compared the confirmation to a gutter-level political campaign and complained about interest groups opposing Kavanaugh's nomination from the beginning. Have you heard of Judicial Crisis Network, Federalist Society? I don't know. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of these people? They seem like pretty big, if not bigger, interest groups in the beginning. So here is some of this horrible speech she decided to make.
The presumption of innocence is relevant to the advice and consent function when an accusation departs from a nominee's otherwise exemplary record. I worry that departing from this presumption could lead to a lack of public faith in the judiciary and would be hugely damaging to the confirmation process moving forward. Some of the allegations levied against Judge Kavanaugh illustrate why the presumption of innocence is so important. I am thinking in particular not of the allegations raised by Professor Ford, but of the allegation that when he was a teenager, Judge Kavanaugh drugged multiple girls and used their weakened state to facilitate gang rape. This outlandish allegation was put forth without any credible supporting evidence and simply parroted public statements of others. That such an allegation can find its way into the Supreme Court confirmation process is a stark reminder about why the presumption of innocence is so ingrained in our American consciousness.
Yes, that's her. Pretty much after that, she pretty much went on to defend him and his judicial record, talking about executive privilege, LGBTQ rights, and reproductive rights. And then she also spoke about Kavanaugh's rave reviews and cited the American Bar Association's reviews of Kavanaugh as one example, which is interesting considering, like, literally earlier that day, they announced that they're reopening their evaluation of Kavanaugh. So, yeah. That's pretty much what's going on right now. So she finished up by saying, "My fervent hope is that Brett Kavanaugh will work to lessen the divisions in the Supreme Court. So we have fewer 5-4 decisions, and so public confidence in our judiciary is restored." Like, she sounds like one of those Star Wars characters. Like, she's pretty much sounds ridiculous, but like you know what he is. You know he is Federalist Society picked. He's nominated by Donald Trump. Look at his record. I think we all know the partisanship on the Supreme Court is not going to go away. Like, I think that's the big deal. So, that's what we got going on right now. Susan Collins, she voted. She was one of the two dominoes that really enraged the two senators that really, their votes really enraged me recently, like, just to say the least. And the other one is Joe Manchin. He tried to play it safe over the weekend, breaking party lines and voting Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court in hopes of courting the Trump-loving majority of his home state, but he may have just shot himself in the foot. Turns out Manchin's Democratic base might have had enough, and the Republicans don't like him either. Manchin went to an IHOP in Charleston, West Virginia, yesterday morning, to try and touch base with his constituents about his vote. Manchin's re-election depends on courting enough of West Virginia's Trump voters, but also energizing the strong Democratic minority to try and vote for him, which doesn't look so good according to the Associated Press. Like, so, Yeah, we're going to get into some Democratic quotes. But first, I thought it was so funny that he came out there. By the way, this is exactly what this snake deserves, is that he comes out and he says, I'm going to vote for Kavanaugh. And then literally the president's son just takes a big fat dump on him for not doing it soon enough in a way that obeys him enough. And the way that he only was going to vote because he was just doing it for Susan Collins. Ann Coulter did the same thing. Like 3 or 4 other right-wing pundits just ripped on him for it. So he's not getting any support from them either, which is hilarious and exactly what he deserves. So, and the Democrats obviously are furious with him. Walker is a first-time Democratic candidate for the state legislature, said she may not vote at all at the state's high-stakes Senate election. Julia Hamilton, a 30-year-old educator who serves on the executive committee of the Mongolia County Democratic Party, vowed to sit out the Senate race as well. At some point, you have to draw a line, Hamilton said. I've heard from many people, especially women. They won't be voting for Manchin either. Ooh. It's not very good. Across the parking lot, 63-year-old John Vajodak said he was deeply disappointed. Still, the Democrats said he'd probably vote for Manchin this fall. So, yeah, I recognize the position he's in because the state's heavily Republican now, Vajovac said. But he's lost my loyalty. And here's some of the Trump supporting voters. So yeah, per the Associated Press, Linda Ferguson, 74-year-old West Virginia Trump supporter, explained politics bluntly as she watched the parade. I think it was at Columbus Day. I don't know what parade it was, but it was some parade that was going on. It was a Saturday's Mountain State Forest Festival in Elkins, West Virginia. If you didn't vote for Kavanaugh, you probably would have kissed his hand and said goodbye. But yeah, here's some of the quotes. This is Tammy Means, a 57-year-old florist from Charleston, who's among those tailgating outside West Virginia University's football stadium in Morgantown, saying he's just doing it so he can get elected. I'm not going to vote for him anymore, which is quite something. Manchin, though, he also tried to lead hard into innocent until proven guilty. He said, I make the votes based on the facts that I have. Speaking outside of a scheduled event at a senior center in Hunting, West Virginia, I made some tough votes in my career. Once I have the facts and I can come home and explain I'm voting for it, so my vote was the same no matter what. And he explained that, while some saw Kavanaugh's hearing as a job interview, he saw it more like a trial. Excuse me? That's not what it's supposed to be. It's a job interview. It's something we can evaluate the candidate for of the job, probably one of the most important jobs, to be sitting on the highest court in our land for pretty much the rest of your life. Yeah, so he saw it more like a trial and made the decision based on the evidence the FBI put before him, which is a little bit disturbing. So here's a clip of some Vice News focus group. This is a Vice News focus group that Frank Luntz put together about West Virginia and what they're thinking about Joe Manchin's vote.
Why didn't Joe Manchin say that he was going to vote to move it out of committee in the first place? He waited until he knew it was going to pass, and then
I think Joe Manchin's finally doing his job. He is supposed to represent his constituency. His constituency overwhelmingly voted for President Trump. More than any state, a larger percentage of West Virginians voted for President Trump than any other state in the union. So Joe Manchin is representing his constituency. Most likely, if you voted for President Trump, you support his Supreme Court nominees.
He wants to get reelected. That's
and
why.
He wants to get everybody's self-interested. Everybody has self-interest.
Everybody has self-interest.
For the record, I just want to say that I support congressional term limits all around.
Yeah.
I'll say amen. Yeah, amen to that.
Senator Manchin voted to confirm Kavanaugh for one reason, and he went on the record as saying he had reservations about his credibility with this sexual assault. He voted yes simply to secure the swing vote. I mean, it's cut and dry. It's like he said, he put his finger in the air, licked his finger, and he's in a tough race with Patrick Morrisey, and I'm disappointed that Senator Manchin chased votes, and he probably will. It'll secure a large block of the swing vote, but I think in his gut he knows he made the wrong decision, which is why his public statement on social media said specifically, I had reservations, but I went that way.
And you think he made the right decision?
But here's the thing. Will it, though? Because voting for Kavanaugh is not going to make the GOP leave him alone. Earlier on Face the Nation, McConnell said the Republicans still plan to fully back Manchin's opponent. So here's what he says. we appreciate his vote for Judge Kavanaugh. I think it's the right thing to do, but we're still trying to win seats. And so he says, quote, Mitch McConnell says, he's still a Democrat. So, yeah, Mitch says thanks for the vote. Sucker. Joe Manchin, Jesus Christ. All right, so as we continue now today, Christine Blasey Ford, obviously, she was one of the bravest people in this whole process. 2 weeks after testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee, that Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her at a house party. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford still says she's unable to return to California home due to the sheer volume of death threats she received since coming forward with her story. This is what her attorney, Deborah Katz, said to NBC's Casey Hunt.
I will say this has been terrifying. Her family has been through a lot. They are not living at home. It's going to be quite some time before they're able to live at home. The threats have been unending. It's deplorable. It's been very frightening. And she's also received extraordinary letters of support and encouragement. But these threats are extremely distressing.
Wow, so yeah, that's some incredible stuff. Whoever sends them death threats, like, how sick do you have to be to send some a random, like, this woman who even Republicans say was credible, she did nothing wrong, and except for some Republicans on Twitter who are like, let's put her in jail. Like, how disgusting do you have to be? Some just hogs who just send death threats to just a mother with children. I mean, so she can't even live in her home. Yeah, so Ford's teenage sons apparently have to be taken in by members of her community so they can remain in school while the family stays abroad. Stays pretty much hidden due to death threats. Ugh, that is awful. And I mean, it really goes to what she said before. It's like she said she's going to come out. She full well knows that in coming out, she may just be stepping in front of whatever she said. I think was a really good quote, but I do forget it at the time. But I mean, I'm pretty much here going to just try and paraphrase it. Is she was like, I know I'm putting myself out here with the full realization that, I mean, all this pain that I'm going through is just going to be for nothing, and the Senate very well could just ignore me and confirm him. And that's pretty much what was true. So, yeah, I mean, whatever the hell it was that Kavanaugh did, and despite Ford's compelling testimony, the Senate went ahead and confirmed Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court on Saturday. So that's what's going on with all that stuff. Just a very horrific situation. Hopefully, we obviously want nothing but the best there for Christine Blasey Ford coming out and really bravely, just like what she did there. It's incredible stuff. So yeah, we're going to take a little bit of a break from Kavanaugh news to a really, frankly, horrifying story. Ladies and gentlemen, apparently we have a decade to prevent a total climate disaster. So, by 2030, we as a collective 7 billion humans will know our fate, at the very least, the fate of the vulnerable among us. A landmark report released on Sunday says the clock ticking for humanity and its levels to keep global warming within 1.5 degrees Celsius of pre-industrial levels. The report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change outlines what a world warmed 1.5 degrees Celsius would look like compared with the 2 degrees Celsius warmed world enshrined in the Paris Climate Agreement and the pathways to get there. It shows that a 1.5 degree warmer world would look much less brutal than a 2 degree warmer one, and we have a lot of work to do in a very limited time in order to achieve it. If we fail, the poorest among us, no surprise there, will suffer the most. Our world has already been warmed 1 degree Celsius since the start of our carbon pollution bender. Based this observation, this is again according to Earther here, in the most hopeful scenario, innovations in efficiency and technology spur huge drops in energy demand, speeding along decarbonization of the energy system and obviating the need for unproven carbon capture technology, which is what we see pretty much was when you take carbon from the air and you're able to turn it back into energy, which is pretty good in technology. Because there really are some pretty hopeful technologies out there. I mean, I do remember seeing recently Vice News, they did a great story about that, like about all the possible things we could have out there to just rectify the issues that we face. Like, and there are actually some really pretty good technologies, which is very encouraging. But if we don't use them, and again, what's the point? So if the technological innovation or missions continue on their